Good day and welcome. Today, we're continuing our series on ancient Egypt. In this episode, we will explore the fascinating world of ancient Egyptian beliefs and religion, their views on death, the process of embalming and mummification, and the powerful pharaohs who ruled the land. Question: which aspect of ancient Egyptian culture do you find most interesting, religion, mummification, or the role of pharaohs? Share your answer in the comments below. Stick around until the end for some thought-provoking questions to test your understanding. Challenge yourself and see how well you've grasped the material. It's a fantastic way to boost your confidence. Please don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss our weekly uploads. For more on ancient Egypt, be sure to check out the links in the description and the playlists. Let's get started. The civilization of ancient Egypt was based on religion. Their beliefs were very important to them, and religion guided every part of Egyptian life. The ancient Egyptians believed that at the beginning of history, all the gods and goddesses lived on the earth and ruled Egypt in much the same way as the pharaohs were doing. They did not believe there was only one god. Instead, they worshipped over 2,000 different gods and goddesses. Ancient Egyptian religion was based on polytheism, which is the worship of many deities or gods. Each god or goddess had a special role to play in maintaining peace and harmony across the land. The Egyptians believed it was important to worship these gods so that life could continue smoothly. Some gods took part in creation, some brought the flood every year, some offered protection, and some took care of people after they died. Often, gods and goddesses were represented as part human and part animal. The Egyptian gods were drawn with animal heads wearing special hats and crowns, and they were always depicted holding symbols in their hands. A common symbol was the ankh. The gods and goddesses were identified with particular animals, often reflecting a connection between the gods and the actions of the animals. For example, the goddess of war, Sekhmet, was sometimes shown with the head of a lioness to indicate her fierceness. Osiris was god of the afterlife, death, and resurrection. Stories about him revolved around the idea of immortality. He made a peaceful life after death possible. Amun-Ra, believed to be the sun god, was thought to row the sun across the sky in his boat, creating night and day. The ancient Egyptians believed in the power of the sun and the Nile River. Both the sun and the river could give life, but could also destroy it. The Nile played a big part in the ancient Egyptians' belief in life after death. The rise of the floodwaters represented this death of the land. When the waters went down, crops would grow, bringing life. Temples were built for their gods, with the most powerful being Amun-Ra. Amun combined with Ra, the sun god, to become Amun-Ra, the king of the gods and the creator of the universe. Amun-Ra was believed to have the power to control the sun, the source of life, making him the most powerful deity in ancient Egypt. These are a few of the gods and goddesses that were worshipped in ancient Egypt. 1. Anubis, god of funerals. 2. Horus, god of war and childbirth. 3. Isis, mother of all gods and nature. 4. Osiris, the god of the afterlife, death, and resurrection. 5. Ra, the sun god. 6. Sekhmet, lioness goddess of war. 7. Atha, protector of women. 8. Amun, the father of life. 9. Seth, god of chaos and destruction. Let's move on and talk about the beliefs about death of ancient Egyptians. The Egyptians believed that when a person died, they were taken down into the underworld. This is the place where Egyptians believed people went after death. They believed that, in the underworld, the dead had to answer many questions and speak about their behavior on earth. They were then judged by the god of death, Osiris. If the heart was not too heavy from sin, then the person was granted a plot of land in the afterlife. The dead person could grow crops for eternity in heaven. This was paradise, or heaven, for the ancient Egyptians. If the person had committed a lot of sin, they did not go to paradise. They believed the person's heart was eaten by the beast, Amun-Ra. The dead person was not allowed into heaven, and their soul would never be at peace. They would be restless and homeless forever. Because their religion said there was an afterlife, ancient Egyptians spent much time and wealth to prepare for living in the next world. They believed they could reach their full potential after death. Afterlife is the life a person has after death. Their belief in the afterlife influenced their funeral practices. This includes embalming a dead body. Embalming is the preserving of a dead body using chemicals. They believed that a person's spirit lived on after death, so it was very important not to let the body decay. Wealthy Egyptians had their dead bodies made into mummies. A spirit would need the things he or she used in this life, in the afterlife. So, they put food, clothes, furniture, and jewelry in the tomb with the mummy. Embalming and mummification were practiced by the ancient Egyptians. This was a process used to preserve dead bodies so that they would not rot. Rich people would have their bodies professionally embalmed, and they were made to look beautiful in death. The poor people would leave their dead in the hot desert sun to dry out. The process of preserving a dead body is called embalming. The body was treated with salt, oil, and spices to prevent it from decaying. The Egyptians thought that people would still need their physical bodies in the afterworld. The process of embalming and mummification involved the following steps. 1. When a person died, the priest said special prayers. A last attempt was made to revive the dead person. 2. The body was then washed and purified. 3. The body was then taken to the wabbit, which was the embalmer's workshop. 4. All the organs were removed except the heart. 5. The body was then filled with a salt called natron for a period of 40 days. 6. After the 40 days, the insides were filled with linen cloth. 7. The body was then wrapped in bandages with jewelry and amulets between the layers. Amulets were objects intended to bring good luck or protection. Mummies are dead bodies preserved with oils and wrapped in strips of cloth for burial. Embalmed bodies were wrapped in strips of clean linen cloth and laid in a coffin called a sarcophagus. A sarcophagus is a decorated coffin with an image of the dead person carved on the lid. Let's now talk more about the pharaohs of Egypt. When King Menes united ancient Egypt, he started a new line of royal dynasties that would rule Egypt for almost 3,000 years. Dynasties are families whose members rule a country for a long time. The pharaoh was usually the eldest son of a royal family, but a woman could have a lot of power in Egypt and could also be a pharaoh. Ancient Egyptian history is divided into 3 periods known as the Old, Middle, and New Kingdoms. The kings and queens in ancient Egypt were called pharaohs. He was the most powerful person in ancient Egypt. The pharaoh had control over all the food Egypt produced and any minerals mined, such as gold. The pharaoh owned all of Egypt. Most pharaohs were men, but some well-known pharaohs, such as Cleopatra, were women. Cleopatra was the last pharaoh of Egypt. Cleopatra united the country again and brought great prosperity back for some time. Cleopatra ruled Egypt from 69 BCE to 30 BCE. She was said to have been very beautiful. After her troops were defeated in battle, she committed suicide by allowing a poisonous snake to bite her. Hatshepsut was the first queen of Egypt to become a pharaoh. She ruled Egypt a long time ago, during the 18th dynasty, and was very powerful and successful. When her husband, Pharaoh Thutmose II, died, she took over as ruler because their son was too young. Hatshepsut even dressed like a king, wearing the same clothes and false beard, to show everyone she was in charge. She made Egypt rich by trading with other lands and built many important temples, including her famous temple at Deir el-Bahari. Even though some tried to erase her memory after she died, Hatshepsut is still remembered as one of Egypt's greatest leaders. A pharaoh was the most important and powerful person in the kingdom. He or she was the head of the army, head of the government, and the high priest of every temple. The pharaoh held the titles of Lord of the Two Lands and a high priest of every temple. As a lord of the two lands, the pharaoh ruled over Upper and Lower Egypt. He owned all the land, made laws, collected taxes, and defended Egypt against foreigners. Foreigners are people from another country. As a high priest of every temple, the pharaoh represented the gods on earth. He performed rituals and built temples in honor of the gods. Rituals are formal ceremonies. Many pharaohs went to war when their land was threatened or when they wanted to take control of foreign lands. If the pharaoh won the battle, then the conquered people had to recognize the Egyptian pharaoh as their ruler and offer him their finest and most valuable goods from their land. The pharaoh was so powerful that the ancient Egyptians believed that he was Horus, the falcon god. They believed that his father was Osiris, god of the Nile River, and his mother was Isis. The ancient Egyptians also believed that after death, the pharaoh became one with Osiris. The ancient Egyptians built huge statues of the king. Some of these statues showed the king with his left foot forward, which meant that the statue was built while the king was still living. If the king's feet were together, it meant that the statue was made after his death and he had become one with Osiris. After a pharaoh died, her body was embalmed and mummified. The pharaohs were buried with all their possessions because it was believed that they would need their things in the afterlife. They were even buried with food. Some of the pharaohs were buried in pyramids, while others were buried in stone tombs in an area called the Valley of the Kings. We've reached the end of today's lesson. But before you go, let's tackle a few questions to consolidate what you've learned. Feel free to pause the video as you answer each question. In our next video, we'll explore the Sphinx, pyramids and temples, hieroglyphics, mathematics and astronomy, and medicine and physicians. Don't forget to check out the links in the description for more resources. And please, remember to subscribe so you don't miss our weekly uploads. Thank you for watching, and take care.